Making headlines for this week of April the 7th. False flag Syria. Very odd circumstances surrounding alleged chemical attack and alleged U.S. missile response. Selective grieving. Hypocrisy surrounding global war of terror as world is conditioned about who to mourn in numerous incidents. Back in black. After 2 difficult years, Russia has imitated Iceland and denied Western interests in trying to sink the country and its economy. And Disclosure Manifesto. International consortium seeks to push existence of life beyond Earth to full global awareness.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. In what would appear to be yet another act of desperation by the global cabal, the people of the world are once again finding themselves being polarized between a fear-based world this group of people are seeking to save and a world of greater hope, peace, health, and prosperity for all. Now is not the time to be allowing oneself to be drawn into the negativity and fear, regardless of how it may currently appear in the world. We do not know what is going on exactly and why. Choices are being made that might seem insane on the outside, but there may have been a very good reason for why a certain choice was made. In the meantime, many are allowing themselves to judge a situation from a very limited, narrow perspective. I am not saying that this is wrong. I am saying, however, that it is a perspective that is very incomplete. At the end of this week's newscast, in the final words, I will elaborate a bit more on this and the choices that many are making at this time that will consciously or unconsciously help to manifest the world that their energies are feeding. In the meantime, we focus on the events, or the alleged events, as they are being reported this week. The mainstream media started reporting this past week an alleged chemical attack upon civilians, and the attempts were made to pin the responsibility on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. For a short period of time, the U.S. held back, but then on Friday, April 7th, reports came out that approximately 59 Tomahawk missiles were launched from warships in the Mediterranean Sea that struck a military and possibly other targets, resulting in several deaths. It is important to remember a few of the historical facts before continuing. The U.S. has been claiming to be in Syria to fight Daesh and Al-Qaeda, both groups being funded and trained by the U.S., while the U.S. bombs the enemy of both groups, Syrian President Assad. Russia has claimed to be in Syria in the past to fight both Daesh and Al-Qaeda. Russia has been actively doing this with the permission of the Syrian government. The U.S. has not received permission to be in Syria, nor has the U.S. even been asked to help. The conflict in the Middle East serves at least 3 different agendas. The most important of these is that the war and conflict serve the global cabal and their profits. Peace is not profitable, and therefore it is consistently necessary to maintain points of conflict around the world. This is the first one. The second agenda lies in the resources from the Middle East that gives the cabal their money, and this is the oil that is in the region. Retired General Wesley Clark has said numerous things, and one of them was that if there was no oil in the Middle East, there would be no issues there today. I have aired Clark's audio clip numerous times before on this newscast, so I will not air it again, although the link will be in the show transcript for those wanting to see it. Clark revealed back in 2007 that the U.S. agenda was to create wars in 7 countries in 5 years. One of those countries was Syria. The third agenda that is served by the Middle East conflict is the use of so-called radical Islam to create destabilization across the region. It is an agenda that is also being actively used today as part of the forced migration crisis that is tearing numerous EU countries apart, as well as the European Union project in general. This destabilization and potential breakup of the EU would be a threat to the global cabal and NATO because the people in EU countries are starting to see through the lies that have been fed to them. Therefore, radicalized terrorism coming from an alleged Islam threat is being used to scare people into needing security and protection. NATO wants to be this protection so they can keep forces close to Russia. NATO needs Russia to be seen by the world as a threat because Russia and China are in the process of destroying U.S.-Israeli global hegemony. This is not the first time the U.S. and its Western allies have attempted to blame Assad for chemical attacks on Syrian people. An article from the almazdarnews.com website in August of 2016 reported that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, has confirmed the traces of sarin gas used in Syria are not linked with the Syrian government's former stockpile of chemical weapons. The report corroborates the Syrian government's assertions that the faction responsible for the chemical attack, as well as 11 other instances of chemical weapons use, was the Syrian opposition. The report also substantiates last month's claims from Ahmad al-Gaddafi al-Owasi, cousin of Muammar Gaddafi, who said that the chemical weapons used in the incident had been stolen from Libya and later smuggled into Syria via Turkey by militants. So, we have a repeat performance taking place. Note that in 2016, the weapons were stolen from Libya, where Hillary Clinton was actively involved in events that took place in Benghazi and resulted in the death of Christopher Stevens, reportedly an ambassador to the country. Also, in April of 2016, 4 months before the release of the OPCW report just mentioned, investigative reporter Seymour Hersh was cited in an article from the geopolitics.ca website. In this article, it was reported that Hersh also said that a secret agreement in 2012 was reached between the Obama administration and the leaders of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar to set up a sarin gas attack and blame it on Assad so that the U.S. could invade and overthrow Assad. By the terms of the agreement, funding came from Turkey as well as Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The CIA, with the support of MI6, also were responsible for getting arms from Gaddafi's arsenals into Syria. Hersh answers a number of questions in this interview, but he also very boldly implicated Hillary Clinton's involvement in contributing to events in Libya and also Syria, among other countries. The Clinton email scandal, thanks to WikiLeaks, is already showing how the Clinton Foundation received substantial so-called donations in exchange for weapons deals that were done through the State Department in a scheme now known as pay-to-play. So the precedent is already set to discredit once again the events of the past week. There are a number of red flags popping up to suggest that this is not a legitimate conflict, but rather it is yet another desperate false flag attempt to justify a conflict where one does not exist. At the same time, we are beginning to see an internal war revealing itself publicly within the corridors of power in Washington. Arguably, for the first time, we are beginning to see some politicians actively standing up and speaking out against actions of their own government. Hawaiian Democrat Tulsi Gabbard has already exposed the U.S. involvement in training and funding Daesh militants in Syria, as revealed by her trip to Syria earlier this year. Republican Thomas Massie stunned a CNN anchor by stating that he believed Assad did not use chemicals on his own people. Ron Paul has spoken out on the subject as well. In an article by Christian Datok from the Ron Paul Liberty Report website on April 5th, the article reports that Ron Paul claimed on Wednesday's broadcast of the Liberty Report that all signs point toward Tuesday's chemical attack in Syria as being a false flag operation. Paul was quoted as saying that before this episode of possible gas exposure and who did what, things were going along reasonably well for the conditions, the former Texas congressman stated. Trump said let the Syrians decide who should run their country, and peace talks were making out, and Al-Qaeda and ISIS were on the run. This would be a very odd contradiction. Why would Trump say on one day that the Syrian people would decide who leads their country, and then suddenly a day or two later launch a large number of missiles into Syria in contradiction to international law and just days before an international peace conference that would be discussing Syria? There is absolutely no reason why Assad would throw all that progress away by doing this. The only answer is that things were moving along too well, and perhaps peace was on the verge of breaking out, and therefore certain people needed the conflict to continue. Is it possible that Trump was betrayed from trusted people within his own inner circle? Reports are circulating about this, but this has yet to be validated. RT reported on April 7th that European countries that have recently been hit by a wave of terrorist attacks must stop supporting the terrorists in Syria if they want to stop the onslaught, President Assad said days before the U.S. launched the missile strike on Homs. Assad was quoted as saying that if Europe wants to protect itself at this stage, it should first stop supporting terrorists in Syria. Assuming that we wanted to cooperate with them, no results can be achieved in these circumstances. Former UK ambassador to Syria, Peter Ford, has spoken out numerous times on this subject, and here's what he had to say.
Ask who benefits. Clearly, it's not the Syrian regime or the Russians who are benefiting, and I believe it's highly unlikely that either were behind what's happened. There are different possibilities. One is that all of it is fake news. The images, videos, the information all come from opposition sources and not from any credible independent journalists. It's also possible that the pictures show the aftermath of a bombing attack which happened to hit a jihadi chemical weapons munition dump. We know for a fact that the jihadis were storing chemical weapons in schools in eastern Aleppo because these were seen later by Western journalists. This is one distinct possibility.
Nevertheless, those that take it at face value are raising once again the issue of intervening against the Assad regime.
Exactly. We never learn, do we? Iraq, chemical weapons, remember that one? We were stampeded. Aleppo, we were told that there was a Holocaust going on. Massacres didn't happen. Independent reporters went in afterwards and saw no evidence of massacres. What we did see were fighters being bussed out quietly. We discovered subsequently that a lot of the footage was fake.
There are also those who say, OK, we are where we are now, but intervention, particularly in 2013, might have changed things.
Well, it's not profitable to discuss the what might have been. Personally, I think it was correct in 2013 not to intervene on the side of the jihadis. Maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect that most people, when they thought about it for a second, would ask themselves, well, what's going to replace Assad and the secular regime, which is protecting minorities, Christians, women's rights? I don't think the Islamists would have been a better bet, and that is even more the case today. Remember that Idlib, where this happened, is a rat's nest of the most extreme jihadis. Dogs returning to their own vomit. They made all these mistakes. Iraq, Libya, they never learn, and they would like to reproduce the same scenario in Syria. Fortunately, the Trump administration moved only last week to disown the Obama policy of trying to unseat the Syrian regime. Trump's people said, we're more interested in unseating ISIS. That's our priority. And you may think it's significant that this attack comes days after that. Now, if the jihadis wanted to complicate Trump's task of making America's policy more sensible, they wouldn't have gone about it any other way than trying to mount a piece of fake news like this.
An unknown source posting on Facebook offered the following question. Why in the world would the Syrian army, which is defeating terrorists all across Syria, use chemical weapons on its own civilians a day before an international peace conference? It does not make any sense at all, and it has all the trademarks of a very desperate group attempting to scare the world into continuing an agenda of crimes against humanity. Adam Gary, reporting for TheDuran.com, reported on April 5th that confirmation has been received that chemical weapons in the city of Idlib were stashed by terrorists, referring to the Syrian rebels funded and controlled by U.S. and Western interests. RT did report on April 4th that the Syrian Air Force has destroyed a warehouse in Idlib province where chemical weapons were being produced and stockpiled before being shipped to Iraq, Russia's defense ministry spokesman said. The strike, which was launched midday on Tuesday, targeted a major rebel ammunition depot east of the town of Khan Shaykhun. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Major General Igor Konashenkov said in a statement. The warehouse was used to both produce and store shells containing toxic gas, Konashenkov said. The shells were delivered to Iraq and repeatedly used there, he added, pointing out that both Iraq and international organizations have confirmed the use of such weapons by militants. It is perhaps possible that this was the basis for the story the Western media is claiming on behalf of Western cabal interests, now that they have been busted once again with these weapons in Syria. Also, once again, the group known as the White Helmets are involved. CVN has exposed this group before of how they stage events to suit an agenda. A Russia Insider article offered a sarcastic expose of the White Helmets by reporting that one thing everyone can agree on. The White Helmets are so brave for rushing to the scene of a sarin gas attack on Tuesday without even basic protective gear such as gloves. Again, this is because the White Helmets are extremely brave, not because they stage videos. Anyone who doubts the White Helmets' superhuman abilities, note the lack of not dying while they run around in a sarin gas wasteland, is a deranged conspiracy theorist, according to responsible news outlets and Twitter pundits. This is in response to photos allegedly from the scene where White Helmets are carelessly caught not having gloves on while wearing protective clothing elsewhere on their bodies. There are some facts that the mainstream media are not reporting to people. An article on the anonnews.co website offers 10 facts that are not revealed. A few of them are as follows. Al-Assad has a higher approval rating than former President Obama. Iran and Syria have a mutual defense agreement. This is significant, given that Russia and China have openly sided with Syria and are courting a deepening relationship with Iran, much to the dismay of the U.S. Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia wanted to build a pipeline through Syria, but Assad said no. Then there is also this little gem. The Western media has often quoted a source known as the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, or SOHR, as a source for so-called credible information. The BBC, Reuters, The Guardian, and International Business Times are a few that have cited this source. However, it seems that the SOHR is a one-man show from his home in Coventry, England, and this individual happens to own a t-shirt shop, and he is apparently a notorious dissident against Assad. Looking quickly now at the fallout from all of this. At the UN Security Council meeting on April 5th, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley issued a call to arms against Syria. Her comments made headlines. However, as the article notes, no one bothered to report what Russia had to say. This article reports that Russia's Deputy United Nations Ambassador, Vladimir Safronkov, said that the West's obsession with regime change is what hinders this Security Council. He noted that for Washington and its partners, everything is guided by regime change, and allegations that Assad used chemical weapons in an attack in Idlib province on Tuesday are based on falsified reports from the White Helmets, an organization that has been discredited long ago. So while Russia calls out the false flag events, the mainstream media stays silent. It is also worth exploring who benefits from the alleged gas attack allegations. Strangely, it is the Times of Israel that reported on statements by Syrian Foreign Minister that Israel is a main beneficiary of this alleged attack. According to a Times of Israel article, Israel is the main beneficiary of allegations that the regime of Assad was behind the deadly chemical weapons attack. This according to Syria's foreign minister on April the 6th. Walid Muallim was quoted as saying that, "I stress to you once again, the Syrian army has not, did not, and will not use this kind of weapon, not just against our own people, but even against the terrorists that attack our civilians with their mortar rounds." Through all the irony of what has just been reported, there is also this. Adam Gary, writing for the Duran on April 6th, shares that in 2014, reports surfaced of the Kiev regime using chemical weapons in their war of aggression against the Donbass region. The article provides numerous videos to support this claim and then closes with the following. The difference between Idlib and Donbass attacks is staggering, yet the Western war hawks want to now topple the Syrian government based on a lie, while they were silent about confirmed Ukrainian atrocities on a people exercising their right to democratic self-determination. If those in the West actually cared about stopping the use of chemical weapons, the regime they'd be threatening with war would be the one in Kiev, not Damascus. In the show transcript summary, there will be several more articles related to this story for those choosing to read more. I'm not quite prepared yet to offer an opinion about what may be going on, but I am very certain that what has happened is not the story about what is really happening. Trump has claimed he wants good relations with Russia. This is not the way to achieve it. Perhaps he is being instructed to position the events a certain way. We do not know. There may be some kind of secret cooperative agreement taking place between Trump and Putin to hit abandoned targets, and this is one speculation that is circulating, and allow the media and the cabal to think one thing while something else takes place. It is all very strange at this time, and until more pieces of this puzzle become clear, making judgments based on limited sources without exploring more of the deeper background, however vague it may be at this time, does not help the situation at all. In other geopolitical news, some more of the hypocrisy of the United States has been revealed as a result of the bombs that exploded in a subway metro station in St. Petersburg, Russia on April 3rd. An article appearing on the website for the Russian news agency TASS noted how the lights were dimmed at 12 midnight during the night of April 5th to show solidarity with the events that took place in St. Petersburg. Paris also dimmed the lights for Canada when an attack killed several people in the province of Quebec. However, when terror-related events took place in both France and Germany, the tower was lit up in the colors of the flags of the two countries. Claire Bernish, writing for the Free Thought Project on April 4th, observes the failure of the U.S. to show solidarity with Russia proves that the real enemy is not terror. Bernish notes numerous different acts of terror resulting in deaths in various countries and how these events were mourned and acknowledged by various other countries. Bernish compares numerous European events where loss of life was smaller than other events in the Middle East or Asian countries, but unapologetically sliding scale grief speaks to efficacious propagandizing of xenophobia in that terrorism's victims in Pakistan, Syria, or Indonesia, for instance, somehow weren't deserving of the same flag-draped condolences as their European brethren. For an unfortunate many, terrorist attacks in the Middle East simply happen there. Thus, it can't be considered as worthy of news, much less sympathy, despite horrendous death tolls in those incidents. Russia did not receive the solidarity that other countries and cities received. Bernish continues, apparently 11 fatalities do not an exceptional tragedy make when the deceased hail from the U.S.-influenced West's current enemy number 1, but the 4 who perished in London, including a police officer killed in the line of duty, do. A distinct reason exists for such gymnastics of logic. Specifically, there is no war against terror. She closes with the following. The fact is, were we legitimately attempting to eradicate terrorism, the Pentagon wouldn't train terrorists to fight in tandem with our troops. Were we legitimately attempting to eradicate terrorism, American bombs wouldn't indiscriminately flatten family homes, hospitals, schools, and civilian infrastructure, emboldening the previously moderate into joining radical terrorist groups and perhaps manage revenge for ruined lives. Were we legitimately attempting to eradicate terrorism, unreasonable structures against legal immigration and the nearly unprecedented refugee crisis would be characterized as the result of the West's military interference in the Middle East, not themselves a threat of future terrorist attacks. Were we legitimately dedicated to eradicating terrorism as the war on terror pretends, we would all be standing in steadfast solidarity with Russia as it mourns the loss of 11 civilians to a terrorist. Instead, we're dehumanizing each other, ranking human worth by nationality and fattening the wallets of the military-industrial machine in our untenable apathy. It is hard to say this because it risks upsetting people. Maybe this is necessary. Grieving is natural. Selective grieving is not. Every human life is equally as valuable as any other life. Cities and leaders of countries pay tributes to allies who have lost as few as 5 lives in so-called terror-related events. These are the events that get the media attention, and therefore begs the question as to what the agenda is behind the media spectacle of national grieving. This is especially considering that all Western governments are complicit in the same crimes. In other words, it is only crocodile tears to support a fear-based agenda to promote their own interests. Yes, this is going to be harsh, as it was to say that 9/11 was a false flag event. No one likes to think of deaths of loved ones as having been used for some kind of negative agenda. The sad fact, however, is that it happened, and it has been happening regularly over the last 100 years, and especially since 9/11. It is worth reminding some listeners and informing some other listeners that after the events of 9/11, Russia made a huge gesture of solidarity to the U.S., and it was not even acknowledged by the media or publicly by the U.S. It took almost 12 years after 9/11 for London journalist John Craven to discover, by accident, that there was a Russian memorial in New York City to commemorate the event. The journalist could not find anyone who knew anything about the monument, but eventually found a taxi driver who did know of it. The teardrop is found away from the city through a deserted army base on an isolated piece of land near the water. One of Russia's leading sculptors was commissioned to design the teardrop memorial, Russia's gift and expression of grief for the events on 9/11. Craven noted the following about the location of the monument. The explanation for the anonymity of this most touching tribute is probably no more sinister than out of sight, out of mind. And that needs to be fixed. Some countries and leaders have the ability to see the bigger picture, and in this case it would appear that even though the Western leadership and media choose to be critical of Russia and being insensitive in times of sorrow, at least Russia has been able to demonstrate some moral high ground as an example. If there is a silver lining to be found within all this exposed hypocrisy, it is that all of this needs to be exposed before it can be released and healed. This will be hard for most to deal with. Philip Watt, writing for the Waking Times website on April 4th, shares the following. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. This is the moment when we can choose to be truly free or choose our enslavement. We're watching a deep split in the deep state, which is undermining the oligarchical grip on our shared resources and systems, illustrating how weak they really are. We're watching huge droves of people slip deeper into deception and delusion, whilst many others are enacting on their courage to face both personal and impersonal truths, as hard as it might be, to raise their level of awareness. And we're also watching most of humanity unconsciously meander towards a crossroad. One path will lead us to decentralize and localize our management structures, and the other will ensure the further erosion of our personal and community sovereignty by a corporatocracy disguised as a government which falsely alleges it takes care of the people. The most potent gift we have is the natural explosion of consciousness which characterizes this moment of so-called time. Everybody is a part of it. Everybody feels it, no matter how hard they fight to deny and suppress it. This is why so many people are experiencing so much inner and outer conflict as they're being forced to truly face themselves and the world they live in. Watt continues, this ancient fight for freedom is not without its own challenges and complications. For example, being conscious of both the spiritual and systemic components of the awakening is vital. Unfortunately, many people choose one at the expense of the other, ensuring an imbalanced perspective and associated action. Yet, the most problematic dysfunction is that we have been purposely distracted and divided, which we've unfortunately fallen for. There's simply no need for the gross amount of infighting, especially when we have the same fundamental goal. That goal is the pursuit of truth and freedom. So, with all that is coming out now, it is vitally important to not be drawn into emotional entanglements relating to global events, but to observe them and acknowledge all that needs to be acknowledged, personally and also collectively, for the highest good of all. While preparing the first two stories, I find out in the afternoon of April 7th that there has been yet another incident in Sweden, this time in Stockholm. A vehicle has driven into a crowd and 3 people have been reported killed. Facebook is calling it the attack, and I am seriously shaking my head. I observed how Facebook quickly activated its feature so that people could report that they were safe during this attack. I observed how many Swedish people to whom I am connected began to engage this feature and how some of them appeared to be buying into the media hype and fear that was being reported. As of the time this was written, only 3 people had died. As tragic as the event is, it is only 3 people. However, the government the emergency services and the media went into a national lockdown of sorts, turning this relatively small event into an international spectacle. Here is the irony. Just after writing stories telling people not to get drawn into the emotion of events unfolding, I found myself being drawn into the emotions of how my friends in Sweden were reacting to this event. After a short while, I began to laugh at myself, realizing the trap I had just allowed myself to fall into. It was a perfectly timed incident to remind me of what I am sharing with everyone, so I have to pull myself out of the emotion of incidents like these. Although I was not drawn into the fear of the event itself, I was drawn into all the reactions of the people I knew in Stockholm, as well as the reactions of other Swedes as shared to me by a friend in Stockholm. This friend described his rising anger at watching the Swedish media make a huge deal out of what appears at this time to be an isolated incident. He described the Swedish media interviewing a teacher at a school south of Stockholm, which was really not affected at all, describing how children were traumatized and needed counselors to console them. One has to wonder how an event such as this deserves international attention and the activation of the national emergency protocols, and a large traffic accident on a highway in Sweden where 5 or 10 people may die does not. Who determines what events warrant a national emergency and international media coverage, and why? The Swedish government and media have gone into overdrive, making a huge spectacle of what is, so far, an isolated incident. As tragic as it is still a very small isolated incident compared to so many other more tragic events that do not qualify for extensive national or international media coverage. Given the kind of attention the media is giving to this, and considering how the government shut down the city and went into a high alert situation, the only conclusion, so far, that I can personally observe from this is that the government is seeking to stir up support for Swedish membership in NATO. Let's see which wolf the Swedish people and the world decide to feed over this incident. As mentioned in the previous story, what needs to end at this time is this selective grieving. People are being killed all over the world by the same people, and yet the media is brainwashing people to see only the enemy that has been chosen as the scapegoat. If humans channeled their collective grief into addressing the root source of all the human deaths and pushing for their arrest or removal from power of those who are really responsible, then perhaps we could stop the entire issue of human deaths worldwide, as opposed to focusing merely on so many isolated events being created with the specific agenda of keeping people in fear and separated from who and what we truly are. I have to confess, writing these 3 stories totally drained me. I have not particularly enjoyed writing these particular stories, but I realize that some commentary has to be made on these events. I sincerely apologize if anyone feels a lower energy vibration coming from me this week as a result of this. I apologize if anyone has interpreted my words as being insensitive to those who have passed away. It is not intended at all, but it is extremely important that we begin to observe this selective grieving and begin to take responsibility for the choices that we want to create for the world we choose to experience. In financial news, perhaps this may be one of the reasons why there are greater Western attempts to stir up trouble in the world at this time. They are losing the battle on numerous fronts, and it seems that Western attempts to sink the Russian economy and prevent Russia from having any financial influence in the world has failed. An article from Russia Insider on April 5th has reported the following: Russia is back in black. After 2 years of retraction, Russia recorded growth in 2 consecutive quarters. The textbook definition of when you can fill your jacuzzi with black caviar and vodka and bask in the glory of economic recovery. At the moment, it appears that Russia has pulled off a feat that is somewhat similar to the amazing recovery made by Iceland after that country's 2-year economic punishment for allowing their banks to fail and arresting politicians and bankers for the destruction of the Icelandic economy. The article continues. Russia was plunged into recession in late 2014 during a perfect storm, which simultaneously saw the collapse of oil prices, Western financial sanctions, and loss of trade with Western Europe and Ukraine due to sanctions and counter-sanctions. During the crisis, Russia followed hawkish fiscal policies, completely unlike those of Europe and the US after 2008. Russia jacked up interest rates, meaning no cheap loans from funds which aren't actually there. And also Russia cut spending, electing to conserve what healthy capital it still had rather than blow it on ill-conceived, centrally planned stimuli. After a relatively brief 2 years, Russia seems to have overcome its crisis. 2 years is not bad. Very good, in fact, if one considers how the Western economies have been in very bad shape for over a decade, and arguably for our entire lifetime. Here is one example of how media interests can influence and even directly determine a country's financial outlook. Back in January of 2016, a Bloomberg article by Carol Matlack was describing how, quote-unquote, bad the Russian economy was looking. Matlack writes the following in her article. For Russia's battered economy, 2016 already looks miserable. As grim as the numbers are, they may understate the increasingly dismal prospects for a country that only a few years ago was enjoying its greatest prosperity. Economists and business leaders, including some with strong Kremlin ties, are warning that Russia faces long-term stagnation and declining competitiveness. Now, when you hear this, you have to understand that she is writing from the Western world perspective. Declining competitiveness means that Russia will be increasingly isolated from the paradigm controlled by the Western bankers. It is meant to signal the influential business elite that Russia is to be punished. However, Russia was busy creating its own competitiveness, and it is this work that is now beginning to reap the rewards of the efforts. While the West was busy attempting to beat down the Russian economy, perceiving Putin as a threat to Western hegemony, Matlack shares this bit of info. Putin, whose approval rating remains above 80%, has shown little interest in shaking up the country's economic model. We have grounds for cautious optimism in 2016, he told Economy Minister Ulyukayev on January 26th, according to official remarks. It would appear that Putin was correct, and this would certainly be bad enough news for the Western financial elites that they would need to find another way to diminish Putin's and the Russian influence worldwide. The leaders of the West were desperately hoping that this outlook alone would be enough to sink Russia so that they would no longer be a threat to U.S. and Western hegemony in the world. When Western financial pundits begin downgrading a country's economy or spreading bad financial news, one can be quite sure that the agenda is to destroy the economy of a nation that is potentially capable of challenging, if not resisting, the Western influence to take over that country, as we have now witnessed in Greece. Some countries, faced with this Western influence, are capable of making, or perhaps were courageous enough in making, new choices to ward off the Western banking cabal. Greece was unable. As the pressure was turned up against Putin and Russia, instead of bowing to Western demands and throwing good money after bad to pay off loans, Russia instead went to work building what appears now to be the new financial paradigm that has the Western countries terrified because it brings the death of a debt-based economy much closer and much more quickly. When one's economy is tied to the criminal banking paradigm and one begins to resist that paradigm, different tools can be used, such as credit rating downgrades, and various penalties can be imposed, such as sanctions, in order to keep a country in line with the global agenda. In very extreme cases, perhaps even the military will go in and perform a destabilization in the country. However, this is no longer working, and part of the credit, at least, is due to Russia and perhaps also to countries like Iceland and others that have resisted the global central banking paradigm. With the help of countries like Russia, China, and allies, it is getting easier for smaller economies to begin resisting and even breaking away from their enslavement to a criminally fraudulent system of banking. As I have stated constantly, everything is so incredibly interconnected that it is virtually impossible to make sense of one single story or one single event without connecting it to a multitude of other stories and or events. This has been by design, so that people would never take the time to connect the dots that I have been attempting to connect for all of you. It is connecting these dots that appear to become increasingly more vital if the people are to properly challenge leaders and begin pushing for this new world that so many of us are now claiming to want to live in. In some disclosure-related news this week, we look to two recently revealed projects that are seeking to force the issue of the disclosure of our galactic families to the people of Earth. In the first project, an international consortium is taking on the challenge to bring official disclosure of this subject to the people of the world. According to a press release on March 23rd, posted on the Zland Communications website, or Z-Land, as many will also call it, the following was reported. Planet Earth could soon be in for an extraordinary awakening of cosmic proportions if the release of a manifesto concerning the reality of unidentified flying objects captures the attention of the worldwide press, world institutions, and governments. Zland Communications, a Canadian news service, has learned that an international consortium of advocates committed to the full acknowledgement and disclosure of the UFO reality and an extraterrestrial presence, and says it has substantial evidence that proves we are not alone in the cosmos and that world governments have known about it for decades. Their goal is to make this assertion known to the entire global community. In its soon-to-be-released manifesto, the Disclosure Activists, a globally designed think tank of research experts, wants to define and address unacknowledged issues surrounding the UFO ET reality as fact, not fiction. A spokesperson for the group indicated to ZNN, the disclosure activists will soon be distributing a press release indicating governments are preparing citizens for a major disclosure announcement about the fact that extraterrestrial intelligences have been and are engaging planet Earth. This shocking statement, one that, according to the co-founders, is backed up by declassified government documents, witness testimony, and other stunning evidence. According to a spokesperson quoted in the press release, our manifesto is not a localized or mundane series of proclamations about UFOs. Far from it. The manifesto is a broad-based and well-designed to achieve 5 primary goals. First, it will point to the global and systemic nature of the UFO phenomenon. Second, it will challenge the United Nations, all nation states, the press, and international institutions to recognize the existence and legitimacy of an irrefutable compendium of declassified and classified documents obtained from government data storage facilities about unidentified flying objects. Third, it will provide decisive evidence that craft of non-Earth origin continue to enter our airspace with impunity. Fourth, our consortium will provide evidence that these craft and their propulsion systems and technologies depend upon an arcane source of free energy that could eliminate fossil fuels. And fifth, our manifesto will show beyond any doubt whatsoever that the UFO phenomenon has been discussed analyzed, assessed, and sequestered at the highest levels of governance and military and intelligence authority on the planet. Dr. Lisa Galarneau, a co-founder of the disclosure activists, was quoted in the release as saying that we know without a doubt that our planet is being engaged by off-world civilizations that are extraterrestrial. As an activist group, we are committed to uniting various research groups and organizations in order to get this story out to mainstream audiences. We do not accept arguments suggesting that there is no proof of this activity, nor do we accept ridicule or stigma when discussing these serious topics. According to the homepage for the group, the consortium is preparing its case to address certain points relating to this topic, and they are included in the 10 following points the group is advocating. Number 1, we confirm that a variety of governments, militaries, and other organizations have had contact experiences and ongoing investigations that they have kept veiled in secrecy for decades. In addition, tens of thousands of civilians have reported UFO or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon sightings, crop and earth formations, and other contact experiences. This is valid data that needs to be aggregated, disseminated, and discussed in public fora, the press, and media without stigma or ridicule. Number 2, we affirm that there have been recent efforts by world government agencies like the CIA, whistleblowers, and leaks to disclose the off-world presence. These efforts require awareness and amplification by the public, and it is our mission to bring this information to international audiences. Number 3, we challenge the United Nations, all nation states, the press, media, and international institutions to recognize the existence and legitimacy of an irrefutable compendium of evidence, including declassified and classified documents obtained from government data storage facilities about UFOs and UAP. We call for public investigations and hearings into these matters. Number 4, we encourage scientific efforts to identify and contact off-world civilizations, but to date they are incomplete despite a slow effort to disclose the possibility of other life in the cosmos. Number 5, we confirm that intelligent life beyond our planet exists, and advanced civilizations have various communication methods and propulsion systems that have allowed them to engage our planet. Number 6, we understand that our off-world visitors hail from numerous star systems and races, and that our contact experiences with these others have been both positive and negative. We believe that disclosure of the off-world intelligences engaging our planet and civilization could mean a quantum leap forward for humanity. Number 7, we are aware that there are numerous unacknowledged and suppressed technologies that have been revealed by these interactions with off-world visitors, and we know that some, such as free energy, could greatly accelerate human progress. Number 8, we attest that government truth and transparency are critical to the success of any democracy, and we have a right to know the truth about our off-world visitors. Number 9, we believe that open, positive contact with our off-world neighbors is imminent, and humanity must be prepared for the knowledge that we are not alone in the cosmos. And number 10, we support truth in disclosure, free of disinformation and hidden agendas by the government, press media, and science. We deserve to know the truth and to understand its implications. For those who are active supporters of this movement, there is a petition available for signing on the homepage, and it is also possible to join the movement and download a PDF file to share the material. The link is in the show transcript summary for this story. Also this week, there is the latest offering from Dr. Stephen Greer. Greer, as many listeners will know, is the founder of the Disclosure Project. His work has focused on bringing together hundreds of people from numerous different official branches who are prepared to testify to their knowledge of or involvement in projects that are connected to civilizations and technologies of a non-Earth origin. In 2013, Greer released a documentary entitled the Sirius documentary, referring to the astrological constellation and stars that have the same name, Sirius. And this documentary not only explored the existence of life beyond Earth, but also the covered-up technology that allowed those civilizations to travel to Earth in the first place. Greer is back with another documentary, this one entitled Unacknowledged. According to an article in the Stillness in the Storm website, Unacknowledged focuses on the historic files of the Disclosure Project and how UFO secrecy has been ruthlessly enforced and why. The best evidence for extraterrestrial contact dating back decades is presented with direct top-secret witness testimony, documents, and UFO footage, 80% of which has never been revealed anywhere else. The behind-the-scenes research and high-level meetings convened by Dr. Stephen Greer will expose the degree of illegal, covert operations at the core of UFO secrecy. From briefings with the CIA director, top Pentagon generals and admirals, to the briefing of President Obama via senior advisor John Podesta, chairman of the Hillary Clinton campaign, we take the viewer behind the veil of secrecy and into the corridors of real power where the UFO secrets reside. The viewer will learn that a silent coup d'etat has occurred dating back to the 1950s, and that the Congress, the President, and other world leaders have been sidelined by criminal elements within the military-industrial financial complex. The following is the preview or trailer for this particular project.
How do you keep something secret? You hide it in plain sight.
July 8, 1947. The flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If you look at the document sent to J. Edgar Hoover, 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. It has become the #1 document viewed on the FBI website.
There have been ET visitation, and people have been attempting to conceal this knowledge.
We actually did recoveries of bodies that were involved with some of these crashes.
I said, well, you're going to tell the public about it. And he says, no, we don't tell the public about this.
There began to be this bifurcation, this separation between legitimate national security and military operations and the deep black programs that are unacknowledged. If people think that it's just a UFO issue, they're gravely mistaken.
This is one of the ultimate secrets that needs to be exposed.
If there was a project that was illegal, the president doesn't know it's occurring, who's going to stop this from happening?
The moon of Mars. There's a very unusual structure. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there?
These deeper black programs have the technology to hoax an alien invasion. They could do it, and they could do it in a way that's 100% believable.
It's very easy to set up a false flag operation, concoct all kinds of false information. They have people embedded in all the major media to change and affect stories. If you tell anyone about this project, this bullet has your name on it, and it will find you.
The strategy was that first the Russians were the enemy, then terrorists would be identified, then third world country crazies. The last card is the alien card, and all of it is a lie. A lie.
The documentary is expected to be made available worldwide on May the 9th. Finally, in health-related news, we come to the final part of this ongoing series of relations by looking at a few articles that may be generally of benefit for individuals in committed relations with a partner. This information may or may not be for everyone, as it will depend upon where each individual is in her or his current space of awareness. Even for those who may be single at this time, they may find something of value in this information as they consider whether or not to enter into a committed relation. For those who have been single a long time, it is possible that they may be or feel guided towards seeking some kind of committed relation with a partner. For another, He or she may be thinking it is time to end one's current relation so they can focus on healing and reconnecting with one's own truth and purpose at this time. There is no right, wrong, good, or bad. It is merely where one chooses to be in his or her awareness in this current moment of now. An article appearing on the Elephant Journal website on March 25th explores the nature of love and that one often cannot know what love is without experiencing that which love is not. An argument could possibly be made from the more spiritual perspective that even that which we may not perceive as love may be love in a disguised form, allowing one to learn better who one is through an experience of being that who one is not. According to this article, we only discover what love is by losing it, or losing ourselves. We learn not just about who we are, but about what love means to us through having our heart broken. Pain is the teacher of pleasure. Each new relationship we enter into, we expect that it will go better than the previous ones, that somehow the mistakes we made in the past won't translate or appear within a new partnership. And for a while, that seems true enough, until once again we are triggered by the other person, or because we begin to react and self-destruct because of our issues involving intimacy. The article also adds the following. We have to go through certain types of relationships that will provide the necessary lessons our soul needs to learn. Each one is different, yet integral to our overall development as a lover and partner. We need to be challenged by our feelings of worthiness, our issues of intimacy, and perhaps most of all, our own level of acceptance toward ourselves. As much as we may be triggered by another, we are only able to learn as much as we are willing to learn. We could probably dress all this up in a decorative, conscious language, but it really comes down to whether we are owning our shit or not. The article notes three main areas of attention: worthiness, intimacy issues, and self-acceptance. The article notes the following about each of these. If we don't feel worthy enough to be in a healthy relationship, then we will continue to work through those issues until we realize what our own worth is. Intimacy issues are something that we carry with us from our childhood experiences into our adult romantic relationships. Are we able to let someone into that space and share it with them? Or do we self-sabotage and push the other person away before they have a chance to let us down? We must make the choice to radically love ourselves for every aspect of our soul and psyche. It's about embracing our flaws and oddities enough to let them out and see how they play with another person's. We can only allow someone to love us as deeply as we love ourselves. In today's world, an evolved relation with another begins with an evolved self-awareness and self-love. As I write and read these words, I am getting hit over the head by a cosmic baseball bat, and the voice seems to be asking if I'm paying attention to what I am sharing. This is the way things go on many occasions. Many relations are ending at this time because the energies are forcing people to deal with issues that were never dealt with from the beginning. Choices made from a lack of awareness at the time are now coming to the forefront, and it has brought many to a crossroads where a final choice must now be made. For those who may be feeling unhappy in a current relation, an article from the Mind's Journal looks at 5 signs that it is time to let go of a relationship. The article notes the 5 points as being the following. When the pattern of behavior does not change over time. You are always exhausted and never feel happy or even empowered. The relationship often brings out the worst in you. What stirs the passion in you and gives you fuel to go on with life is the reason for conflict. You always think of letting go of the relationship. Letting go is one thing, and being ready for the next relation is another. In this next article, it offers 8 signs that one is ready for a new relation. These signs are offered as being the following. You sense a feeling of attraction. You notice others and find attraction. You start getting better treatment. You start feeling inspired by your personal likes and hobbies. You get back on the groove with friends. Your health starts improving. You are giving a shot at romance again, and you start feeling hopeful. There is also the saying, if you want to know where your heart is, look to where your mind goes when it wanders. For the spiritually aware couples, perhaps they have decided to work through all issues together and give their love a chance at growing. Another article from the Minds Journal blog site offers 6 steps to mindfully dealing with difficult emotions in relationships. They are as follows. Turn toward your emotions with acceptance. Identify and label the emotion. Instead of saying, I am angry, say, this is anger, or this is anxiety. In this way, you're acknowledging its presence while simultaneously empowering you to remain detached from it. Accept your emotions. When you are feeling a certain emotion, don't deny it. Acknowledge and accept that the emotion is present, whether it is anxiety, grief, sadness, or whatever you are experiencing in that moment. Through mindful acceptance, you can embrace difficult feelings with compassion, awareness, and understanding towards yourself and your partner. Realize the impermanence of your emotions. Allow yourself to witness and observe your emotions with kind attention and patience, giving them the latitude to morph and, in many cases, completely evaporate. Inquire and investigate. After you have calmed and soothed yourself from the impact of your emotions, take a moment to delve deeply and explore what happened. Those who make the effort to deal with difficult emotions probably understand that there is a deeper reason for their being together. Others may not have this awareness. Are there perhaps signs that may guide one towards knowing if they are meant to be with her or his partner? In a third article, the following 6 signs are meant to be together, that you are meant to be together with your partner. You respect each other. You share many of the same interests. You tell each other secrets. You are not jealous. You fight well. You finish each other's sentences. Making the choice to have an evolved relation is really easy. Putting into practice all the qualities that create an evolved relation is a totally different thing. As one learns to oneself, one may be able to more easily let go of expectations about how a partner is to be. For those who are desiring to explore more of this, the link will appear in the show summary transcript for this story. Evolved relations are coming from a higher consciousness, and many may not even be consciously aware that they are drawn to certain people at certain times for the purposes of certain lessons. Perhaps more now than ever before, people are starting to get a sense of familiarity when they meet certain people. There are sources that believe that we may encounter many of the same souls that we have existed with in past lives. An article on the Life Coach Code website from February 25th offers this information. Basically, we come from one energy source that we call love. Through our lives, we get glimpses of this beautiful energy and call it many names. In fact, the romantic love we feel for each other is only a glimpse of this source. This love source is our home, our real home, where our soul comes from. and we come here in this world to project this love through our interactions with others. But as we go through our lives, we forget where we come from. We tune out about this love source, and we hurt each other, intentionally or not. All people that we meet through life are our teachers, whose role is to help us to release from the poisons we are holding on to. Relationships are possibly the best reflection of our karmic debt. We are looking at the love source, but through a mosaic of our poisons. We are building a relationship with a person who reflects all of our suppressed dirt, which is preventing us to radiate with pure love. In a relationship, we are not growing by expressing our best features, which are not the real us, but by having conflicts. The moments of conflict are worth gold because important things are happening. When we have our first moment of jealousy, we should ask ourselves, why am I having this feeling? What is this feeling within me? Another article refers to marriage, and although many recognize the institution of marriage as a church-state creation, there can still be what some call spiritual unions between souls choosing to commit to each other without going through all the commercial ills of church and state. In this article, there are two quotes referenced that are worth sharing. The first is this, from an unknown source. Most people get married believing a myth that marriage is a beautiful box full of all the things they have longed for: companionship, intimacy, friendship, and so on. The truth is that marriage at the start is an empty box. You must put something in before you can take anything out. There is no love in marriage. Love is in people, and people put love in marriage. There is no romance in marriage. You have to infuse it into your marriage. A couple must learn the art and form the habit of giving, loving, serving, praising, of keeping the box full. If you take out more than you put in, the box will be empty. The second quote is from Abraham. Tell everyone you know, my happiness depends on me, so you are off the hook. And then demonstrate it. Be happy, no matter what they are doing. Practice feeling good, no matter what. And before you know it, you will not give anyone else responsibility for the way you feel. And then you will love them all. Because the only reason you don't love them is because you are using them as your excuse to not feel good. The article adds this. Relationships aren't about making an unhappy person happy, nor are they about making an unloved person feel loved. Relationships are about sharing the love and happiness that is already present within you with another, growing, improving, and evolving together, both emotionally and spiritually. What happens in situations such as these when old souls reconnect in the current lifetime? Brianna Wiest, in an article from the Thought Catalog website on March 1st, offers 17 insights that may help one recognize a soul-level connection. Number 1, you spend a lot of time together. 2, after getting together, one or both of you may experience a serious emotional awakening, which on the surface seems like a breakdown. 3, you don't ever want to be apart from each other, but you still are capable of having a life outside of them. 4, your unresolved emotional issues begin to resurface. 5, you're both idealists and used to being the one to have the last word. This is something you have to reconcile. 6, you immediately feel like family to one another. 7, you do not feel like you have to earn the other person's love. 8, you get along so well it feels like you've known one another before. 9, even if you don't have a ton in common, you still feel like the same person. 10, the circumstances that led you to meeting seem serendipitous. Number 11, you realize that you have a lot to learn from each other. 12, your paradoxical traits become more evident. 13, you are humbled. You begin to really understand how little the material matters. 14, though you're both mature individuals, you help each other revert back to childlike joy. 15, you have to be mindful about maintaining your individuality. 16, you are truly best friends and partners, and you're capable of being all these things to one another because you worked so hard on yourselves beforehand. And 17, you are both growth-oriented individuals, and your relationship reflects that. There are even those who believe that your life partner has been predetermined long before you even met this individual. An article on the Peace Quarters website explores this phenomenon for those who believe in this possibility. For those who have experienced this and can say it is true, the article explains it this way. You will always return to one another, for the magnetic pull that exists between the two of you is unstoppable. You already have a commitment that you have not even stepped a foot into yet. When you finally reach that point of self-acceptance, you are living from the heart. Your lifelong partner will do the same, which will result in a relationship that is not based on fear, rather a relationship that is based on each other. Some may then ask, have I already met my partner and missed her or him? How will I know? An article on the Spirit Mind Energy website describes at least 3 ways one may recognize an individual with whom one has had a past life connection. If you have experienced one or more of these connections with an individual, then you have had a past life connection with her or him. The article shares the 3 criteria as follows. 1, you feel an instant connection or repulsiveness. 2, your connection is almost telepathic. And 3, you see it in their eyes. Each of these are explained in greater detail in the article. Old souls approach love and companionship differently. An article explores this from the Truth Inside of You website from May of 2016. According to this article, an old soul is essentially someone who is young but prefers to be around older people and has a more mature outlook on life than most people their age. Old souls tend to spend a lot of time alone, and a lot of people seem to misunderstand them. Contrary to what people think, old souls aren't lonely. They are just comfortable with being themselves and enjoy their own company. When it comes to love and being in relationships, they also express their love differently. The article offers 15 characteristics of old souls, but due to the length of this story, those qualities can be read from the article in the show transcript. An article from the David Wolf website offers 8 problems that only an old soul will understand. A few of them have already been covered in this story, but 2 of them that really hit home for me personally were that old souls struggle with infinite possibilities from limitless angles. Although beneficial in one sense, it can be very crippling from another sense. The other problem or challenge is that old souls aren't sure if they will ever find their home. They have a constant feeling that they don't belong, even when they're with friends and family members. They go through life seeking a soulmate or a kindred spirit and a place that feels like home. Having an evolved relation can be as easy or as challenging as one chooses to make it. Choosing partners for the wrong reasons or out of a desperation for attention or from loneliness will not guarantee a successful relation, although it may be possible. We are being called to heal ourselves at this time, and although a committed partner may be able to help bring joy, companionship, romance, intimacy, and more, it ultimately comes down to both partners and how ready each one is to make a meaningful contribution to not only one's own personal growth, but the growth of one's partner, and of course, the growth of the relation overall. A few extra links will appear in the show transcript summary, and this will appear also on the Evolving Relations webpage located on the CVN homepage. Just before I start the final words, I want to let everyone know next week's newscast will either be a little bit early or a little bit late, and possibly shorter, depending upon my schedule. I have been invited to attend the second anniversary meeting for Liberland. CVN has reported on Liberland twice before, and now I am currently living close enough to where this community will be forming. I have asked and received a discount to attend as an independent journalist. The event will be taking place from April 14th to 16th and will include presentations from the public officials establishing Liberland, as well as other guest speakers outlining the vision and direction for this exciting project. I have explored other communities that are starting to appear around the world, including Oroville in India. Between Croatia and Serbia, there is a fairly small area of land, approximately 7 square kilometers in size, that is considered to be disputed territory. A group of people are seeking to claim this land and have moved forward with very progressive plans for the development of this new territory and country where people can live in greater freedom and independence. I will be presenting more on this project with the latest updates next week, perhaps, and possibly in the following weeks, depending upon how much material there is to share. As the event is scheduled to start on Friday, April 14th, I may or may not have as much time to work on these days as I normally do. If there are any delays, I do apologize in advance, and I thank you for your patience. In this week's final words, as soon as the news came of an alleged chemical attack in Syria, I began getting the feeling that this was an issue I was going to be drawn into commenting on. With the news on the morning of April 7th that the U.S. had allegedly bombed Syria, it became even more apparent to me. Sadly, there are many people on social media trying to demonstrate a spiritual awareness who are attempting to show the world that they are awake and aware while getting sucked into the emotions of the moment and are making postings sharing what they believe to be happening while trying to convince others that their perspective is the right one while others are, by default, wrong. Folks, let me be as clear as I can possibly be. Now is not the time for emotional and immediate overreactions to everything that is unfolding. Many of you look to me as a grounded source for your information about what is happening in the world. I am, of course, extremely grateful for this, and it is a responsibility I do not take lightly. If my word means anything to anyone, let me repeat what I just said. This is not the time for emotional overreactions to everything that is unfolding. Now, of course, I say that, reminding you that I also mentioned that I allowed myself to get caught up in the drama of events in Sweden and the people's reactions. It will happen. It is vital that those of us who choose to remain grounded continue to observe neutrally, without judgment, all that is unfolding. Things are becoming more clear with each false flag event, and with each messed up opportunity the mainstream media attempts to pass off as a potentially false agenda message to the world. We are reaching a very critical point in several ways. The most important of these is, of course, the survival of humanity upon the planet. I say very clearly and firmly that I do not believe any kind of significant nuclear war will be allowed upon this planet. This is my personal belief, and I know it is the personal belief of many listeners. However, there are those who have not had the benefit of gaining insights into the actions of this global cabal, and thus have not been able to connect the dots in such a way so as to remain more calm and grounded. The global cabal, I am convinced, is fatally wounded. This once dangerous animal is now not only fatally wounded, but it is becoming increasingly cornered and isolated. This makes the cabal potentially more dangerous for a short period of time. What this also means is that the vibrations of humans are vulnerable to all that is now happening. For those who have seen the movie Tomorrowland, it may be worth sitting down and watching this movie again, as I get the feeling that there are some important hints to take away from this movie. There are hints in many movies, of course, but there is also an agenda of disinformation to be aware of. Looking for the nuggets of gold, discerning the information, while sharing it wisely and gently becomes one goal for those who genuinely and sincerely desire to be in service to humanity and the planet. The young woman in Tomorrowland, Casey, reminds her father about the potential for the future with this story.
There are two wolves. Okay. You've told me this story my entire life, and now I'm telling you. There are two wolves, and they're always fighting. One is darkness and despair. The other is light and hope. Which wolf wins?
Come on, Casey.
Okay, fine. Don't answer.
Share everyone you feed.
Good.
For each human to learn or remember who she or he is, it has been necessary to go through lifetimes of existing within the illusion of duality. The reality is separate from that which we truly are. We have been drawn into lifetimes of experiences of lower vibrations, and some would learn and remember and begin to share. More would learn and remember, and so on. We are, arguably, at another such period where we have the choice to move forward in evolution or destroy ourselves, as happened with the destruction of the Atlantean civilization many thousands of years ago. The global cabal has been extremely good at putting the truth of their agenda for human enslavement right in front of us and masking it as entertainment. Most humans eagerly suck up this entertainment to turn it into their reality. This is part of what was hinted at in Tomorrowland in this scene. Governor Nix tries to justify his actions of attempting to reveal to humanity what was going to happen to them by planting the seeds of the demise of the planet directly into their minds. The outcome, however, did not materialize the way it was intended.
Let's imagine, if you glimpsed the future and were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to politicians, captains of industry, and how would you convince them? Data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman and putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it is to show it. Scare people straight. Because what reasonable human being wouldn't be galvanized by the potential destruction of everything they've ever known or loved? To save civilization, I would show its collapse. But how do you think this vision was received? How do you think people responded to the prospect of imminent doom? They gobbled it up like a chocolate eclair. They didn't fear their demise, they repackaged it. It can be enjoyed as video games, as TV shows, books, movies. The entire world wholeheartedly embraced the apocalypse and sprinted towards it with gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, your Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future, but you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future, and you resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. So, yes, we saw the iceberg, you warned the Titanic, but you all just steered for it anyway, full steam ahead. Why? Because you want to sink.
The end of the movie has the positive message, however, of sending people back to Earth and going out to find all the dreamers in the world, the ones who have not given up hope, for they will be the future. We are being bombarded with information that will allow us to manifest the reality that is closest in alignment with one's personal worldview in the current moment. If one has a worldview based in fear, or if one has a worldview based in hope, love, and peace, both are right. Both, however, cannot serve the highest good of humanity in the planet. One of the vibrations is going to lose, and it is my personal choice that the vibration of negativity and fear has run its course. I see the experiences for what it has been worth and how it has helped me to become who I am. I am trying my best to practice gratitude in every moment for these experiences so that I can move forward, but of course, some days are better than others. I have not, however, given up hope, and I know many of you will not give up hope. I have my moments of falling down into despair. Sometimes I have to process and deal with it on my own. On other occasions, there are angels who come into my world to remind me who I am and what my service is. I, in turn, return this gift to listeners with the message to not give up hope and to continue to reach out to those dreamers who dare to envision a world where humanity is not enslaved, nor is our planet being destroyed for profit, power, and control. We are surrounded by people who are lazy and who are looking for the easier solution because they are not ready, willing, or able to deal with the reality of all that is being exposed at this time. For them, it is easier to stay ignorant or uninvolved because that choice, as you just heard, does not ask them to do anything today to create a better future and a better planet. In the spiritual journey, both personally and collectively, we are entering a period where we will all begin to discover how well we have been practicing what we have been preaching. An article appearing on the Gaia Scenics View blog site describes getting comfortable with discomfort. The article shares the following. Many enter the spiritual path or some practical version of it in an effort to feel better and eradicate the discomfort that has built up in their lives, because most formal paths set forth a series of rules that devotees must follow in order to receive a certain end game, be it peace, forgiveness from sin, or eternal bliss. They devoutly follow rules and regulations on a spiritual path, preparing for initiations and chasing a place of bliss. Anything that distracts them from this goal is a threat. When discomfort raises its head, they feel they have failed because it is not bliss. They reject themselves instead of the path, and increasingly this piles on even more discomfort that must be addressed. They generally recommit and double down on their efforts on one path or find another path to save them from discomfort. Clearing old energy, healing old wounds, letting go of old beliefs, allowing in new information, dropping self-defeating behaviors and perceptions, or any other unique aspect of the evolutionary process. None of it is a picnic, folks, but it is all necessary to allow in true self-love and evolution. We know we are evolving and growing when we start experiencing discomfort, and the dark issues from our past keep coming up for release and healing. Every human, bar none, will have to do this at some point in his or her path. We collectively are facing this now. Humanity's darkness has been there all along. Only now, however, there are sufficient humans who can see the darkness for what it is, an opportunity to grow and evolve from that darkness, and they have the wisdom, awareness, and courage to anchor the energies that can help transform it. We need to keep looking for the dreamers and those who appear ready to face not only their personal discomfort, but the global discomfort, and are choosing to do their very best in each moment to hold the vibration that will create a positive transition and a positive transformation, personally and collectively. Choose your battles wisely and avoid engaging social media postings that focus on fear and negativity. Respond if you really feel called to, as there may be a reason for this. You can save yourself a lot of grief if you consider what it is you are about to post, and what reactions you are anticipating or even hoping to get. It all comes down to this: which wolf are you choosing to feed? Create a great week until our next Moment of Now. So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary available on the website. CVN can be followed through Facebook, unseen.is, and minds.com, and the CVN YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that the world is not falling apart, but rather the veil of worldwide corruption is lifting. Until our next Moment of Now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.